The name's Bond. James Bond. Suave, sophisticated, and celebrating his 50th birthday. For today's show, we've got the keys to the Aston Martin and a licence to investigate the secret to this British icon's success.
Bond. James Bond.
My name is Bond.
My name is Bond.
Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
One of the most famous lines in cinema came from the pen of this man, Ian Fleming, who himself worked in British intelligence during World War II. To bring Fleming's stories to the big screen, two men were instrumental: producers Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli. From the first ever film, Dr. No, many of the classic elements were already present. From John Barry's famous score to one of the most famous Bond girls, Ursula Andress. Dozens of femme fatale have since appeared alongside the secret agent, but only 6 actors have ever played Bond himself. Among them Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and of course the current incarnation Daniel Craig, who outlined his recipe for a classic Bond film.
You just have to sort of, keep at it and keep working at it and keep it sort of as fresh as you possibly can and try to reinvent a lot of what is classically Bond as well.
Over the years, the movies have had to adapt to a changing world. In the 60s, the films were a product of the Cold War. Then came Détente, and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, new threats were discovered. Now, clearly, the focus is on terrorism and more diffused threats. So each time Bond tries to focus on the fears of the moment. It's certainly not all geopolitics, though. As well as action, there's also been a healthy dose of tongue-in-cheek humour, especially from the villains.
Mr. Bond, you defy all my attempts to plan an amusing death for you.
The films themselves have made over $5 billion. And of course, there are the tie-ins, such as a number of successful computer games. The cultural impact has been such that even the Queen deigned to appear beside James Bond for the opening of this year's London Olympics. After 50 years of Bond, it seems that, like diamonds, he could be forever.
Forever, sparkling round my little finger. Unlike men, the diamonds linger.
50 years since James Bond's life in movies began in a casino in the opening scenes of Dr. No. He's still going strong, and the new Bond movie Skyfall is said to be the best yet. From Istanbul to the casinos of Shanghai to an abandoned island off Macau, Skyfall is 007's 23rd outing. Outlandish action scenes, glittering settings, and larger-than-life characters, like Javier Bardem's deliciously odd camp villain. With affectionate nods at what's gone before and hints about what's to come, it's funny and fantastic, with flair that's fitting for our favourite spy.
We're going to kill him first.
Our mission is to interview the man behind the film, the Oscar-winning director Sam Mendes. Let's see if the British filmmaker puts his cards on the table. James Bond first came to the table 50 years ago. The world was a very different place then. He served as kind of a comfort blanket to people at that time. But why is he still popular? Because that was quite a long time ago.
Well, I think he shifts with every movie. I think that's one of the reasons why he's continued so long. I think for me in this movie, he was very English, and he was very, he represents somehow old values in this film. The difficulty was also at the same time telling a contemporary story, and you go through different periods, different generations love different actors and different kinds of Bonds, and it regenerates. So it really, he's changed so much over the 5 decades that he's been going.
Excuse me?
007. I'm your new quartermaster.
You must be joking.
Why, because I'm not wearing a lab coat?
Because you still have spots.
When it comes to James Bond, the rules of the game are quite strict and everyone has their opinion on how it should be. This is also a very important film, the 50th anniversary film. How did you put your mark on it? Did you already know what sort of film you wanted to make?
Yeah, I think I was surprised how much I already had an idea of the film I wanted to make once I started. You know, everyone has expectations, everyone has an idea of a Bond movie that maybe is not your idea. And you realise very quickly that, you know, the moment you start talking to people, you know, one person will say, oh, you know, you've got to bring back the gadgets, you know. And the next person, literally the same day, will say, it's so much better now they're not trying to have gadgets, you know. Everyone has a different opinion, or someone will say, make it funnier, and someone will say it's better than now it's not trying to be funny. So you have to work out what you want to do with it, and then hope everyone else likes it.
And Daniel Craig actually persuaded you to come on board. How did he do that?
He asked me, you know, I don't think when he can persuade you to spend 2.5 years of your life on something, do you know what I mean? You have to want to do it. But he made the first move. You know, he said, was I interested in making a movie with him and making the Bond movie? And it was only when he asked me that I really contemplated it for the first time. And then I met the producers 2 weeks later, and then those 2 weeks I really thought about it a lot, and I decided that I needed a bit of a challenge. You know, I wanted to come back to England to make a movie on a big scale again, and do things I'd never done before, like action, and, you know, so that was all part of it.
When it comes to Daniel Craig, he seems to get better and better every time, every Bond. But when it comes to action scenes, does he kind of get involved, or does he have stunt doubles?
Well, he has several stunt doubles, but he almost always, if it's humanly possible and not insane to do it, he will try and do it, you know. And that involves, in this movie, standing on top of a train moving at 50 miles an hour across a 500-foot drop, you know, doing a fist fight, connected by a tiny wire, one wire, you know. With me saying, you know, you don't have to do this, you know, you can just let your stunt double do this, but he said, well, let me have a go, you know. Then he went at 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, and before you know it, he's doing it. And what happens when you have someone do that is that it just gives everyone a lift, because if your leading actor is prepared to do that, then everyone else gives 100%, you know, and it's really inspiring. So it's a great thing. It's not just about doing the stunts, it's about what it means to the whole movie.
Take the shot. I said take the shot. I can't, I mean it, Bond. Take the bloody shot.
And what was it like working with Daniel Craig? He'd already played James Bond twice. Was that quite intimidating to come on board?
Well, it might have been had I not known him. I knew him 10 years before, you know, he was in a movie for me, Road to Perdition, and, you know, so I had an existing relationship with him. And I actually liked the fact that he'd already played the part, because he's done all the hard work, you know, he's established the character. Now you can start playing with him. You know, the first episode in a TV series is not always the best, you know what I mean? Because you have to do all that work establishing the character. And then when you get into the story, that's when you can start playing around with him and pushing him to areas that, you know, the audience maybe don't expect. So actually, I liked it in the end.
It's called radio.
I do hope that wasn't from me.
But that is.
After 50 years of James Bond, who would you say is the all-time best one, without being too biased if you can?
Well, it's difficult, you know. Obviously, I'm going to say Daniel, but for me, I have a soft spot for Roger Moore, because he was my first Bond when I went to the pictures, you know, for the first time. I saw a Bond movie in a cinema, Live and Let Die, with my dad. Also, it's sort of different, depending on what mood I'm in.
Skyfall is a truly fantastic film. Lots of people say it's the best Bond ever. Do you think you'd be up for doing another one?
Well, it's a question I've been asked a lot, which I take as a compliment, I guess. But, you know, I put everything I ever wanted to do with a Bond movie into this one film, you know. And I have to feel that way again. And I put a lot in it, you know, and a lot of myself in it, but also a lot of ideas. So if I felt that way again, I would consider it, because it would be as creative as this one has been. And it's been a real pleasure to do. So we'll have to wait and see.
With his licence to kill, 007 has got rid of more than 220 baddies in his time, meaning our favourite spy has come up against quite a few close shaves. Bond movies have been setting death-defying standards for the past 50 years, thanks to pioneering stuntmen. Appearing in more than 1,000 movies, our next guest devised every 007 car stunt for a period of 15 years, including that iconic chase in A View to a Kill.
The trick was to pass under a barrier, and to do that I had to bend down. But before doing so, I had to memorize the pass, which was shaped like an S. During this zigzag, I accidentally turned on my windscreen wipers. Of course, there wasn't a windshield there anymore, so the wipers were scraping my knuckles and my fingers were all scratched and bleeding, while I was laying on the car for a couple of seconds.
And since you started as a stuntman 50 years ago, things must have changed quite a bit.
Yes, it's quite unbelievable, but it's not really a revolution, it's an evolution.
Meet Sébastien Foucan, the creator of the art of free running. He became a global sensation in Casino Royale, where he played the acrobatic villain.
Nice to see you too.
Thanks for jumping in. Sébastien, were you always a big fan of Remy's work?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen the Remy's work since I was kids, and it's always amazing when you see all the sequence and you try to analyze and to think how our stunt coordinator can create all these sequences, because it's like magical tricks, you know, and I grew up with it and it influenced myself.
Casino Royale is a departure from the old stunts. Things are very much more real, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. We go back to the roots in Casino Royale, and we decide to not do CGI and green screen, and to do it for real, has the old-fashioned style, and I think we manage it pretty well.
Chicken, that's still, mademoiselle?
Thank you, Michelle. And if you want to know the recipe of his trademark drink, you can find it in the very first James Bond book, Casino Royale, Chapter 7. And talking about ingredients, we've seen action, we've seen exotic locations. There's just one thing left to complete the James Bond experience. Thanks for watching. See you next time.